started. Again, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Ashley Huckaby May, the Interim Director for the Hood River County Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors and myself and our organization, we want to welcome you to the 2020 Hood River Candidate Forum. We'll be featuring our state representatives, the state representative candidates from District 52, our mayoral candidates for the City of Hood River, as well as City Council candidates for the City of Hood River. I'd like to thank our moderator, Paul Crowley, this evening for generously volunteering his time, as well as our candidate panelists. Just a few housekeeping suggestions. You are all viewing this webinar as attendees, so you won't be visible to the candidates or the moderator or the host. All questions were submitted prior to the candidate forum by Hood River County and Hood River City residents. The questions were selected randomly. The candidates were provided with 2 of the questions, and the other questions that will be asked will be selected randomly live during this forum. The order of the candidates' presentation was decided by a flip of a coin prior to this. And last but not least, each segment, the state representative, mayoral candidates, and city council will be approximately an hour in length, with the state reps first, and then our mayoral candidates and our city council candidates third. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Paul Crowley. Again, thank you, Paul, for joining us this evening.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Hood River Chamber of Commerce's General Election Candidate Forum. This forum will be recorded, and the link of that will be posted on the Chamber's website. The format is generally this. The candidates will get an opportunity to make an opening statement. They'll each all get an opportunity to respond to pre-submitted questions, and the candidates will then be given an opportunity to make a closing statement. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the Chamber of Commerce, and these are my comments only. These are not comments that the Chamber asked me to make. These are things I'd like to talk to you about. The Chamber's mission is, and I quote, to inspire and sustain economic vitality and responsible destination development as stewards of community resources in partnership with local leaders. And that's a really tough task in the midst of a pandemic. The Chamber is largely financed by events it holds, like the Harvest Fest, the Hops Fest, the Cross Channel Swim. None of those things happened this year. Nonetheless, the Chamber continues to do its best to work for you. Tonight is one such example. So I'd like to thank the Chamber's Interim Director, Ashley Huckaby May, their Chamber Coordinator, Mary Ellen Holmes, and give you my pitch on behalf of the Chamber. If you can help the Chamber, because by doing so, you're really helping yourself. Now we'll begin the forum. Ashley's already talked about the order of presentation, so I'll go right into the format. Number 1, each candidate make an opening statement. Candidates for representative and for mayor will be allowed 3 minutes each. Due to the number of candidates for city council, they'll be given 2 minutes each. Number 2, all questions will be addressed to all the candidates. They'll get 90 seconds to respond. Number 3, the questions were pre-submitted and solicited through the Chamber's website and through the Columbia Gorge News, and thank you to the Gorge News for advertising that. Number 4, the candidates were provided 2 questions in advance. The rest of the questions be randomly selected by Ashley. I pre-numbered the questions. She doesn't know the order of the numbering. She'll call a number, I'll ask a responding question. Number 5, if a candidate wants to respond to a statement made by another candidate in their response to a question, they may do so either when responding to the next question or in their summation. Number 6, all candidates will be allowed a 2-minute-long summation. And number 7, I will act as a timekeeper. I'll notify the candidates when they have 15 seconds left. If somebody goes over a few seconds, that's fine, we'll be reasonable. But if they do so repeatedly or they go over a long period of time, I'll penalize them the next round and take it off their allotted time for the next question. All right, so with the candidates for state representative, it has been determined that Jeff will go first and Anna second. And Jeff, I'll turn it over to you first to make your opening statement. You're muted right now.
I want to say thanks to the Chamber, Paul and Ashley, for coordinating this. And Mary Ellen, these are tough things to do at these times of the COVID, but it makes our jobs a little easier to get together and have at least an opportunity to talk and have a discussion with people. So for me, I'm Jeff Helfrich. For me, I was in public service for over 30 years. In that 30 years, I found out giving back to the community and working for somebody else other than myself was a calling for me. And so started my career in the Air Force. From there, I was a Gulf War veteran. Then I became a police officer in the city of Portland. Was there for 25 years. And in that 25 years time frame, I became involved in politics and Cascade Locks at the small local level, whether it was on the budget committee or planning commission. And then from there, it was on city council. From that, once we moved out of Cascade Locks and came to Hood River, I resigned and then lived here in Hood River. The opportunity to go to the state legislative body was presented. I took my foot through the doorway, the threshold, and became the state representative and worked on some really good policies while I was there in the short session. And then, unfortunately, Ann and I ran and I lost. I'll say I lost. It just is what it is. But there's some work that needs to be done. We need to have balance back in Salem. I'm a regular guy. We've got 2 little kids. We like to go fishing. We like to enjoy the outdoors. Like to do a lot of things. But I think politics needs to be more about people and less about activists and special interest groups. You know, our government programs have gone it's more spending and more spending without having the accountability there. And having that supermajority in Salem doesn't allow for all the voices of Oregon, especially our district, to have that opportunity to speak and have a representative down there that's wants to represent all of the community. So with that, I'm going to yield my time to Anna, but I also want to make sure that time gets spent down to the rest of the candidates, because those local elections are also very important to have the candidates have the ability to have their opportunity to be heard. So
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, of course, to the Hood River Chamber for hosting us tonight and for everyone who's here, and Paul for moderating. My name is Anna Williams, and I am your state representative in the Oregon legislature. I ran in 2018 because my work as a social worker in Hood River County, but also Wasco, Sherman, Gillum, and Wheeler counties, showed me how Oregon policy doesn't always work as well for our rural communities. In many ways, it's built and researched in more urban communities. Most of the Oregon Democrats live on the I-5 corridor. And I wanted to really help them understand how housing policy, social service policy, healthcare access is different in our communities, and make sure that when we're writing policy, we're thinking clearly about our rural, suburban, and frontier communities as well as the urban communities. So it's been challenging and an opportunity to learn a lot about how our government works. I've found a number of different ways that a legislator can get things done. It's not just about passing as many bills as you can. It's also about agency oversight and continuing to look at the budget and making sure that our money is invested in places where we really get the best bang for our buck, and not just spending money because it sounds good or it feels good. So I need to get back down to Salem and continue on the work that I started in the last session. And I look forward to talking more about what I will be working on as we work our way through this forum.
All right, thank you, Anna. Now, since Jeff had the opening statement first, Anna, you get to respond to the first question first. And I'll start off with one of the I'm going to actually start off with both of the pre-submitted questions. But number one, what kind of public investments will you support to help stop climate change? You're on.
So, you know, as maybe some people know, the governor made an executive order after the last long session when we were unable to pass the cap and invest bill. And so we have the targets already defined as far as where, sorry, that actually just popped back up again. As far as where we need to be with regard to emissions reduction, but what we don't have is the roadmap in terms of how to get there. And so I am dropping a bill that will help bring timber, agriculture, and our coastal marine economies to the table to talk about the experiences that they've had in adjusting to climate change as it's already impacted their work, and the ideas that they have in terms of solutions, so that as we're building our path toward climate resiliency, we're using every tool we have in the toolbox to make sure that we're building good jobs across Oregon and reinvesting in communities that have already suffered because of wildfires, because of water shortages, and because of the other impacts of climate change. So as far as what the state needs to spend on that, I don't think we have a whole lot of money right now.
You have 15 left.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We don't have a whole lot of money to spend right now on that. So I'm really looking at focusing on planning and drawing the map right now while we sort of gather ourselves around this COVID crisis and being more forward focused.
All right, thank you, Anna. And then Jeff, to you.
So when I get back to Salem, one of the things, the first bills and legislative concepts I'm going to drop that I've already been drafting is we got to figure out as a state how to incentivize businesses that are on the leading edge and cutting edge of reducing fossil fuels, bring them to Oregon, bring them the jobs and the economy that they're going to bring with them to help look for at stopping climate change. And it's not about capping and investing in taxing. It's about looking for ways that we can do better as a community and be that leader out in front. We don't want to see what happened in California. You know, Oregon's been a trailblazer since the 90s in environmental friendly policies. We need to continue that. We are good at doing those things. We're in the top 5 in the nation reducing carbon emissions. And I think that's a very big thing that we're able to do that. And even opponents to that bill or proponents of the bill, the cap and trade bill, they knew that it wasn't going to do anything, have any significant impacts on our carbon emissions. So I think when I drop that legislative concept, we do the study, try to figure out how we have the great businesses here, creating those partnerships, then bringing everybody at the table, not only the timber and the agriculture industry, but the buildings and trade industries, the commercial industries, because they all are going to have an impact in this. How do we work it and do better, not have a tax system that's capping or taxing people and their products? And we don't want to have unaffordable ways
left.
for us to. We don't want to raise the cost of living for people in rural Oregon or in our city centers either that could be affected by this type of legislation.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And now, Jeff, to you first. Started my timer prematurely. It may start that all over again. I want to shortchange you there. All right. Again, one of the pre-submitted questions, the ones that went to you. Portland has seen over 100 days of protest. Are the protests really a statewide issue? If so, should a state response be beyond the involvement of the Oregon State Police?
So I've worked there for 25 years, understood the protest, the environment, and the First Amendment rights are very important for people to express that. The reasons for the protests that were going on, you know, we always have to be better and do better changes. What has lacked in the first days that this protest was going on, I said openly that we need to stop these protests because they're going to get out of hand. The civil unrest that we're watching and seeing is not working. It's when destruction and property damage has happened, it has been devastating to the economy of Portland. It's spidered out outside of Portland to other communities and destruction. It's not the answer. The message has been lost in that, but we need to make sure when the state police were called in by the governor to assist with that, the reason why that was there was a lack of leadership in Portland. That lack of leadership created they used to have these mutual aid agreements that unfortunately at some point were ceased and desist by other agencies, and Portland wasn't able to call in other officers and other departments for help because they didn't like those policies that Portland was setting and creating liability for their officers and their agencies. And so when the governor created that order and brought in the state police, I think that was a smart move on her part to help out the officers that had been just beaten down
15.
in Portland. And I believe that decision was a right decision by the governor for calling in the state police and helping with that.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And Anna, to you.
Honestly agree with Jeff on this. It is a statewide issue from the standpoint of, talking to voters in our district, being nervous about what if the unrest spreads. They're losing business if they have clients that maybe are out of state and only seeing this on the news and not really seeing how concentrated the issue is really in Portland, but wondering if maybe all of Oregon is suffering from similar unrest. So absolutely support the First Amendment rights of the protesters. And I think the reason why we've seen such a sustained amount of protesting is because they have a real point to make and they need to be heard. And the mayor needs to sit down with all of the affected groups and have real conversations and start making plans to move forward I agreed with the governor sending in the Oregon State Police, and I think it was a helpful response. And I'm looking forward to ongoing, more proactive responses coming from both the governor's office and the law enforcement community working together to solve this problem.
All right, thank you. And Ashley, I now need a number from you between 3 and 8, please.
2.
Did you say 2 is not between 3 and 8? Let's try that again.
Oh, excuse me, 5.
Okay, so Anna, it is I just have to straighten out a note here. Okay, it's your turn to go first now. Last session, all but one of the Republican senators walked out to stop the cap and trade bill, effectively derailing the legislature. Both parties have walked out in the past. For example, led by now Governor Brown, the Democrats walked out in 2001 to stop a Republican effort to redraw legislative district boundaries. Should something be done to prevent walkouts in the future? If so, what? Or are walkouts just part of the political process?
I think walkouts should be maintained as an option. I think they've been overused since my time in the legislature. Depending on how you want to count it, we've had 5 different times that Republican legislators refused to show up for floor votes, so we were unable to move forward. Some of the things that we could do include changing the quorum number so that we don't need as many people on the floor to continue to move House business forward, or potentially looking at putting penalties in place for people who choose not to show up for, say, 10 days or longer. I do think it is the legislator's job to show up and vote their conscience on a bill, and I've done that. I've taken hard votes where I voted no on bills that I knew were going to pass without me, bills that I strongly opposed as a representative of my district, and I think that that is really what the job is. That said, there are times when I think the legislature might be on such a wrong track that it is necessary to sort of grind that business to a halt. I think it should be used much less frequently than it has been in recent history.
All right, thank you. And Jeff, your turn.
I think one of the things that Anna pointed out said the legislature's on a wrong track, and it's true. That wrong track is a supermajority that's sitting in Salem and not having that balance. That balance starts with a 30-30 split. That balance also, walkouts are no way to legislate. We can't do that. That doesn't help our state. It doesn't help it doesn't help our constituents. It's not what we're there to do. We don't need to do that. We just need to have a balanced legislature and have every voice heard, not just a majority of people where another portion of people's voices is not heard. So that, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ashley, I need a number of either 3, 4, 6, or 7.
7. Got it right this time.
All right, and Jeff, you'll be starting this one. And the question is, homelessness is a significant and growing issue in Oregon. What should be done to address the issue by the legislature?
So I got to see homelessness at a very front row seat. 25 years in Portland, that was the place where a lot of people came. And it was sad to hear their stories. A lot of it, people are affected by drugs and alcohol. And the drugs and alcohol then created some mental health issues. And so we need to address the drug and alcohol problem, and mostly it's drugs, and then the mental health issues that are caused by some of these drugs. Methamphetamines, fentanyl, all these drugs are huge, huge issues. And unfortunately, people want to decriminalize those. I think that's the wrong approach. I think we need to be able to enforce laws, get people help that they need. The homeless part is having a strong economy. We're obviously in the recession, or obviously in COVID right now, and trying to come out of that. We need to get businesses back open. We need to be able to create an environment where businesses want to be here. Like Anna said, it may be a small problem in looking Portland, but businesses are leaving. We have a PR issue, but it's not just Portland. There's other places that these protests have happened. But to get our economy back on track, get businesses open, allow for us to go be safe, wear masks, whatever we need to do to get our economy going. But that will then help translate into jobs, opportunities for people to get off the street, and create an environment that's helpful for everybody. We have to have good shelters
15.
in place. We have to have good shelters and safety nets in place, but we have to be able to get people back on their feet and moving in a direction and getting jobs so they can support themselves and not have to worry about being on the streets and being homeless.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And Anna?
So, you know, you look at the homelessness problem in Oregon, it was something that was building for quite a while. And then the budget cuts that were made in 2009 in the legislature have been blamed in many ways for deepening that crisis. And some of the things that they did were cutting off access to mental health care and addiction treatment services. Oregon now has a significant mental health and addiction services. You could call it a desert. And so we need to make sure that we're investing in the pipeline, that we have workers who are willing and able to do the work to help people with their mental health and their addictions. We also need to make sure that people have access to affordable housing. So we've been working in the legislature on the Human Services and Housing Committee, which I was vice chair of, to figure out a way to pay for long-term rental vouchers. The research shows that the way you get somebody into a well-paying job is not to train them into a job first right off the street, but to help them get housing and then get sober and get their mental health under control, and then they will be ready for a long, well-paying job. So we have to start with where people are and work them to self-sustainability, and that looks like an investment in the state to make sure that they have the housing they need, can get sober, can get the health care that they need, and then are ready to have those high-paying jobs that we're also working to build as we recover from COVID.
Great, thank you. I tell you what, we only have actually 2 other prepared questions, and I'm just going to ask both of those and not worry about asking Ashley to give me a number, because clearly you're moving along. We're going to cover all the questions we have prepared for you. So this question will first go to Anna. Has the governor's response to COVID-19 been too little, too much, or appropriate? What would you have done differently?
I would give the governor a B+ on her COVID response. I think she's done a good job in a very challenging environment. When it first happened and we were on statewide calls regularly talking with the Oregon Health Authority and other statewide players, she mentioned a time that she was on a phone call with Vice President Pence, and he suggested that we buy the PPE we need for our state on Amazon. That is not a solution, and the federal government has failed us in their COVID response. It is their job to coordinate that plan and ensure that we all have access to the resources that we need. And since people travel across state lines, you know, quite a bit in our district, having a clear and consistent plan that counts for the fact that people live and work across state lines would have been helpful. No state government can do that. So within the context of what she's done, I think she's looked at the science, she's been responsive, she's been transparent. I think that's been confusing for people sometimes as we've learned more about better responses to COVID. She's changed direction. And that's been actually what a good leader does. When you learn more, you do better. If you just hold tight to what you did on the first day, as you learn more, then you're not improving your response as you go along. So I don't know what I would have done differently, because I didn't have access to all the information that she was using to make her decisions, but she's been very transparent with us. And when I've had concerns, she's listened to me and clearly considered them in her next policy decisions.
All right, thank you. And Jeff?
So I think the COVID response, we can look to South Dakota and how that governor handled the state and didn't shut it down, was able to keep people, jobs open, people were having the ability to continue to work and moving that forward. I think the governor at the time, based upon her information she made a decision. I think that decision should have been reviewed within 30 days after the initial 30 days, and then came to the legislative body and made the case to continue the emergency declaration and moving it forward, and having that accountability and transparency throughout all branches of government to allow for opinions and thought processes and different ideas to be brought to the table. I think that's important. You know, the CARES Funding Act should have gone to the counties and shouldn't have gone distributed to groups like the, it should have gone to groups like the chamber to help businesses and stuff. I believe that the opportunities that were missed during this are apparent, and we can look at different states across the nation and see their responses. But based upon what the governor knew at the time, or what she believed, those are the decisions she made. You know, Anna gave her a B+. I'll give her a C+, maybe, right in there. But I wasn't sitting in her chair and I didn't know all the information. But just looking at other states and how they've responded and how the outbreaks have been contained and what they've allowed their economies to continue to grow, I think we could have done better.
All right, thank you. And now to you, Jeff. Oregon's budget is funded mostly by income taxes, a revenue base that can fluctuate wildly based on how the economy is doing. Should we substantially change our tax system by doing things like terminating the tax kicker, imposing a sales tax, or creating a truly graduated income tax structure? Yeah.
So the kicker's already been answered by the voters. They've answered that very loud and clearly. The state, you know, last 2 years, you know, they raised taxes by $3 billion. I think what we have to look at how we're spending money, reimagine government, reimagine how we fund these priority projects and how we're going to do that effectively and efficiently. The ability for us to do that needs to have a legislative body that's balanced. We have to have the ability and the fortitude to have and answer those questions. We can't keep raising taxes. The sales tax has been answered by the community or by the citizens. And so we just can't, we're not going to continue to push forward in raising taxes if the supermajority exists, or a very high, even more one-sided system. People can raise taxes without listening to the citizens, and we can't have that.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Anna?
So I'm excited to see how the cat tax plays out, which was the largest tax that we passed in the last session. I think I'd like to address Jeff's $3 billion number. I checked the citations on the attack ad that he has out that says I raised taxes by $3 billion, and that would include if cap and trade had passed and the tobacco tax passes, which is in the hands of the voters right now. So that is not an accurate number. It's more like $1 billion a year. And that is coming primarily from the top 10% of Brit incomes in the state. And I do think it's fair to ask those organizations to invest in education for their workers who are going to be coming out, to make sure they have roads to transmit their goods, and the other things that they rely on the state to provide. That said, I don't think we're going to see a sales tax anytime soon. And as Jeff said, the voters have spoken on the kicker. I don't see that changing. At this point, I don't think we need to add any additional major taxes. I think we need to look at how are we spending what we have coming in well. And if people don't want to pay taxes, then we're also going to have a conversation about what projects can we cut, or what programs need to be funded less. Because, you know, it takes money to fund the government.
15, please.
So that said, I'm happy with where we are in terms of Oregon's tax structure. I'd like to see a more progressive income tax structure at some point, but I don't think now is the right time to do that. We have enough uncertainty as it is in Oregon. Okay.
All right, thank you. We're actually way ahead of schedule. We could do one of two things. We could move on to summations, or I could ask one more question, which would be a question developed by me right now.
I would vote for just doing the summations and allowing the other candidates at the local level to have more opportunity to speak.
All right, and I'm working on a unanimous vote, so that would be basically it. So Anna, you get to sum up first. Give me a chance to get my clock set. It's ready to go.
I just would like to say thank you to everyone who is here watching tonight. It has been an honor to serve this community and this district over the last 2 years. In my work with the Chamber and the businesses that are members of the Chamber, as we've worked through COVID, we have talked so much about the safety precautions that need to be taken, how to get funding to continue to keep your business open, continue to advocate for more flexible spending of CARES Act money so seasonal businesses can take advantage of the federal supports that are available, and making sure that businesses and their employees have access to high quality childcare. That is going to be a major priority of mine as I move forward. So I ask for your vote. in this upcoming election, and I look forward to representing you regardless of who you vote for. My door is always open, and one thing I do think I have demonstrated as a legislator is that I will listen to anyone, particularly at a point of disagreement, because that's where I have something to learn. So come to my office and share your fears and concerns about policies and how they may have impacts on you. I will take it seriously, and I've even been convinced and voted against my party multiple times after people from our district came forward and shared with me how they were worried about particular bills. For instance, banning a particular pesticide, even though that bill passed the House, it failed because of the Republican walkout. And so I look forward to continuing to serve you all and invite you to reach out to my office with questions, suggestions, or any kind of concerns you have that I might be able to work on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anna. And Jeff, it's your turn.
So for me, I want to protect our communities. I want to go back to Salem, represent the communities. I only voted 73% of the time with my party when I was down there. Anna voted 95% of the time. So that's not balance. The balance is having a 30-30 split, or as close as a split as you can to have in the legislative body. We need to bring more jobs to our community. We need to reduce taxes and reduce our spending. Because if we don't reduce our spending, we are going to continue down a deficit, and businesses are going to leave, and everybody's going to suffer from this because things are going to cost more for us. Why are people leaving the state and businesses leaving this state and other states? Because the taxes are too high. For that, I need to bring balance on jobs to our community. I've proven when I was in the legislative body, I listened to people, I changed my mind, I did the right things for the right reasons. For that, I want to ask for your vote. I want to go back to Salem, represent this district, and represent the citizens of not only this community, but the state with a balanced approach, like I did when I was in law enforcement. When I showed up to the door, it was about fixing a problem, working it together, and finding a solution. With that, I ask for your vote, and I want to return to Salem to bring balance back to Salem. Thanks.
All right. Well, that concludes our section on the state representative candidates. I want to thank you both for participating. I know this is a tremendously awkward way of running for office. I know that both of you have stopped at my door before. I wasn't there at either time, but I've received information from both of you and realized that you probably would rather be out knocking on doors and talking directly to people. This is the best we got right now, and thank you for participating. Good night.
Thanks for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
All right, Ashley.
All right, I'm going to take just a moment to promote our mayoral candidates to panelists and say thank you to our state representative District 52 candidates and demote you to attendees. So thank you for joining us. And if you all will just hang on just a moment, please. Right. All right, let's see. Danny, I believe you've been changed to a panelist. If you wouldn't mind starting your video, please. There you go. Yeah. Excellent. I'm going to take just a moment to say thank you for being here. Again, I'm Ashley Huckaby May, Interim Director for the Hood River County Chamber of Commerce, for anyone that's just now joining us. I'm going to hand this over to our moderator, Paul Crowley, who's been so generous with his time this evening and volunteered to help us out as moderator. Also, thank you to our mayoral candidates for joining us this evening. Paul, I'll hand it over to you and let you do introductions.
All right, thank you, Ashley. And as before, the decision of the order of proceeding was decided by flip of the coin, and Kate will be going first, Daniel will be going second. We'll alternate as we did with the last candidates. We have 2 questions that the candidates have received in advance, 6 other questions in our pocket. Given what happened last time, I suspect we'll be able to get through all of them, but I'm going to continue to ask Ashley to select numbers, so we're going randomly, and if we don't get through all of them, it will be by a matter of just fate. And just resetting my clock here. Kate, you'll be going first, and you have 2 minutes to make your opening statement, if you would, please.
Great, thank you so much for putting on this forum, Paul and the Chamber. I really appreciate it. I started public service by sitting on the Planning Commission for 8 years, which educated and familiarized me with land use issues and hearings. Land use is a huge part of what council does. Housing, parking, roads, sidewalks, park plans, and urban renewal all include land use aspects and decisions. These are issues that affect everyone. I feel this is one of my strengths when making decisions that affect the city's growth. I consider how these decisions affect all citizens, not just the ones that have time to attend council meetings. I was appointed to City Council in 2012 and subsequently elected twice, and appointed as mayor last year. I view myself as a consensus builder, along with the ability to get into details when needed. I've been a member of the Hood River Energy Council since the plan was in its early stages of conception. Because I've lived here all my life, I've witnessed a lot of things. In the 70s, the whole town, downtown, was really very run down. The streets, the sidewalks, there were storefronts that were boarded up, but so much has changed since then. New people arrived with wind on their mind in the early 80s, and it really reinvigorated our town. And some, quote, locals use the term board head in a negative way, but those new citizens brought energy and a love for the community too. Numerous additional waves of citizens have found their way to our community to raise families and recreate and retire. And I keep in mind that we need to make room for all people that help make our town this great place to live. There is room for old timers like myself and newcomers alike.
15.
I'm proud of the city for getting on sound financial ground and being able to weather most of this COVID crisis. But there are others that are living paycheck to paycheck. There are businesses that rely on the tour industry, and there's been disparity with vulnerable populations being especially affected during this time.
Great. Thank you, Kate. And Danny, it's your turn.
Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. If you haven't visited my website yet, it's dannycorreaformayor.com. You can find a bit more background on me there. Tonight, I'd like to stress how important this election is. We have the opportunity to make real change in our community by electing a mayor that hears, understands, and will represent the voice of business owners in our community. I never thought that I would have time to participate in politics. I'm making the time now because it's critical for our community to unite in our shared dreams for our future and those of our children. Our community has been embroiled in what boils down to contentious land use initiatives over the last decade that have stressed friendships and divided neighbors. Time and time again, our city has presented us with the cart before the horse, and they're already halfway down the road when they begin to invite community involvement. Consultants, special interest groups, focus groups, and survey monkeys are not an equivalent for community involvement. Public involvement is a required part of land use planning in Oregon. The requirement is one of the things that makes Oregon's land use planning program so unique. The goal for involvement is to involve citizens in all phases of the planning process. And in Hood River's case, I would make it a priority to address any barriers to the participation of our community with limited English proficiency. Our City of Hood River website should be accessible in both English and Spanish. Materials and audiovisual content should be presented in the same manner. Community involvement has been a city goal since at least 2014. Our city council and committees need systemic change. They've invited us to vote for more representative voices that better understand the needs of our community, and we should do just that. Limited parking, crowding in City Hall, and dinner time meetings make it difficult for our community to attend no matter how engaged they'd like to be.
Okay, 15, please.
Should ensure every city meeting is live streamed on an official City of Hood River YouTube channel. Every city meeting would be transcribed immediately and made public on the meeting link. I'm running for mayor to make sure the voices of the people are heard by having a seat at the table. There's a saying that applies perfectly. If you aren't at the table, you're on the menu.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take a moment to get organized about something. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by offering a confession. As the moderator, I just made a mistake in that I had offered you 3 minutes initially and then went to the 2-minute deferred to that way use for representatives. So Kate, I apologize, and Danny for shorting you. I also ask you to give me 3 points to make in introducing you, and I overlooked those, so I'm going to go to those now. And Kate would have you know, she was born here and loved this area so much that she never left. Being fortunate enough to be able to stay, she wanted to give back by helping shape and serve the community. That's point number 1. Point number 2, she has seen so many changes in Hood River since she was young. She tries to embrace change, and she believes that the vast majority of these changes and future change will be for the betterment of the whole community. And number 3, because she grew up in a blue-collar family in both her childhood and adult life, she wants to help enact policies that will allow those working families an opportunity to live in the community they continue to support. And Danny said, point number 1, that she was raised in Hood River and is a 6th-generation Oregonian. Number 2, that she is a wife and mother of 2 children who she fully expects will live, work, and raise their children here too. And number 3, that she's owned a small business in Hood River for nearly 15 years and has become increasingly interested in local issues and their impact on their community and local businesses. So confession being good for the soul, I feel good now. Apologize for that, we'll continue on. Then moving on to the questions, and this we do have 90 seconds for each response. And since Kate went first, it is your turn first now, Danny. And I'll start off with the questions that we had pre-submitted to you.
Okay.
And question number 1, what are your top priorities as a candidate and how do you plan to achieve them?
Collectively, as business owners, we are the economic driver for Hood River. And my vision of Hood River is dependent upon city governance that ensures adequate levels of public services to address future growth through infrastructure build-out, supporting our businesses, employees, and the community at large. Our downtown core needs a parking structure to grow prosperity. Commercial property owners need the city's support to meet our community's goal of worker housing. Our community needs safe and ADA accessible sidewalks. We need an equitable transportation network that facilitates mobility for our people throughout all walks of life. We need to make sure that our parks are part of this network and that we continue to invest in green spaces as we plan for the future. We deserve solutions to the pressing issues of equitable housing, accessible infrastructure, and public health and safety. Strong partnerships with the Hood River County School District, the CGCC Education District, and local employers is one way we can solve our housing issues for our children and grandchildren. A strong program of dual credit, early college, trade, and technical education will create an education and workforce pipeline for employers in our region and earning potential for our children and grandchildren. Supporting housing development will take leadership from council to instruct planning to remove the red tape that has cost our community several developments in the last decade. An honest conversation about implementing HB 2001 by our entire community will be my first step. Hood River doesn't meet either criteria for implementation, and I think it needs to go to a ballot initiative so that the voices of our community can be heard before taking a step that will radically alter the livability of our community.
All right, thank you. And Kate, to you, please.
Thank you. Personally, knowing friends and families that struggle to maintain a household in this area of expensive housing keeps me motivated to help our hardworking citizens with policies that might help them find a way to live in the community they are contributing to. There's a large need for additional housing types, and currently the city is looking at these different housing types and barriers that keep private developers from constructing them. Additionally, when an area like ours is so popular that the sky's the limit for rent and housing ownership, it falls to the city to partner with others to find ways to keep our firefighters, nurses, teachers, and other essential workers that provide us food and keep our businesses functioning, a way to be housed in the community. The other item that's extremely important to me is climate change. It affects our city, as we've seen with fire evacuation notifications and poor air quality from forest fires that keep us indoors. Dwindling snowpacks on Mount Hood could even affect our water supply. The city needs to do its part to reduce its carbon use, and the good news is that everything we're doing at this point is saving the city money. We have a very well thought out course of action that the city has endorsed and is working on through the Hood River County Energy Council.
All right, thank you. And the next question will be for Kate to respond to first, and that is, again, one of the questions you received in advance. The 2019 Community Health Needs Assessment reminds us that transportation is one of the highest unmet need as part of our built environment in the gorge. Data on diverse populations show that about 20% of the people cannot access basic needs such as healthcare or food due to transportation barriers. What should be done to address that problem? And that's the question that was originally submitted, and we as a panel decided to include, to open up the question, what other measures might you consider would you consider supporting in order to address that issue? Kate, if you would.
Thank you. The city has partnered with Columbia Area Transit to help fund the trolley that we had in the last couple of years. We anticipated that this would help in several ways. We move visitors around the city in the summer and lessen car congestion, and we'd make it walking and biking easier because of that. It also would allow locals to access it during a busy time of year and make it easier for them to get around. About a month before COVID-19 hit, I rode on the Columbia Area Transit bus with their board chair to see and discuss what potential parking improvements could be made for their buses. We also talked about potential infrastructure and signage for bus stops. COVID-19 curbed our discussions, and with ridership plummeting and new restrictions for social distancing, our conversation has been on hold since then. I'd add that any housing discussions should always keep in mind that the further out from the city center and its amenities that you place housing, the worse this problem becomes for those with transportation needs. We're a small community with a great public transportation for its size, and I believe more fixed routes are planned for Columbia Area Transit in the future. But the city is always open to having more discussions of where we can help with that.
All right, thank you. And Danny?
I think it's vital to the health of our community for the City of Hood River to work with our transportation partner, the Hood River County Transportation District. Columbia Area Transit, CAT, has the expertise to partner with Providence, One Community Health, and other agencies to ensure that diverse populations have access to healthcare. Partnerships with local grocers, farmers markets, and fish food bank are also vital. Our community deserves an equitable transportation network. As mayor, I will seek out partnerships that will connect the Hood River County School District, CGCC, Education District, and our county's largest employers to create both a fixed city route and an intercity fixed route between Parkdale, Hood River, and Cascade Locks to ensure that students, workers, patients, shoppers, seniors, and the disabled can move easily and consistently around our community.
All right, thank you. It's abundantly clear that we're going to have enough time to go through all of the questions. So rather than have Ashley randomly pick out numbers, we're going to go through them all anyway. I'm just going to go through the list and get you all the questions that were submitted. And Danny, it's your turn to go first now. In what ways can the city plan for expected population growth? Do you have ideas about how the city can address livability issues like housing, affordability, provisions of adequate park spaces, and transportation needs, including human-powered connectivity?
I think that it's really important for the city to make sure that we are planning for mobility for all of our citizens around the city, whether that is walking, bicycling, public transportation, or personal vehicles. We need to make sure that we have space for parking in the downtown core. We need to make sure that our city, as we grow, really takes a holistic look at how it's going to work for all of our people. I've heard over and over from so many people how concerned they are about the livability of our community as we grow, if we decide that we're going to upzone and increase the density. I've heard so many concerns about safe sidewalks, safe crosswalks. We need to make sure that we are making our town accessible and that we are making sure that our workers especially are valued. We do live in an area that many visitors like to come to and to enjoy, and we need to make sure that the workers who service the businesses and hospitality services are feeling valued as well, and know that we want them to have safe housing, we want them to have access to transportation, and we want them to have everything that they need, that we can provide for them.
All right, thank you. And to you, Kate?
Thank you. A few years, well, in 2015, the city did a housing needs analysis, and then we did an update late last year of that. And we are going to be growing a lot in the next 20 years. I mean, the estimate of how many people are going to move here is quite a few people. And you know, the amount of housing that we're going to need for people that aren't going to be in the high income bracket is expanding, because the prices of things are higher and higher all the time. I know people don't like the word density. You know, they have something in their mind of what that might look like. And I think that's why the city is trying to work on right now, trying to figure out what is density, what does density look like? What do different forms and types of housing look like? I think sometimes when people think density, they think row houses, they think apartment buildings that are 4 stories high. But then I take them to some areas that are where I live in the Heights, on the eastern side of the Heights, and there's a few apartments, there's some fourplexes, there's duplexes, there's single family homes, and they love the look of the neighborhood. So I think sometimes when we talk about density, it isn't you know, the big bag ugly wolf that you think it might be when you actually look at it. But we have to plan for it. We have been planning for it. We have a transportation system plan that is planning for it. We have a parks master plan that the city just adopted, that the Parks and Rec District just worked with the city and the county and the port on. So we are working on a lot of those things.
All right, thank you. All right, so now Kate, to you first. If presented with the opportunity to allocate COVID relief funds like the city did in September, what sectors are your top priorities in the second round? For example, nonprofits, housing, or shelter, sport, business grants and sport, and the like.
Well, you know, if people are following the city council meetings, you know that we, for the most part, gave the COVID relief money that we had to some money to go towards shelters for homeless. And then we gave a bigger pot of money to United Way for them to distribute as they saw fit to the most needy nonprofits. And we did give some funding to the chamber. You know, I hope that the money that they're going to have for the homeless shelters is going to be enough. Personally, I would like to look at that again and see if they might need more funding. But I think this second round should potentially look at businesses, because we looked at nonprofits the first round. And if you know, it depends on how long this goes on, but there may be more need for personal protective equipment for businesses or other things for businesses. So I think the second round would probably look more on the business side than the first round did.
All right, thank you. Danny?
I would agree. I think that businesses would need to be the first sector that we look at. I think that the chamber has a vital role to play in our community's future. Visit Hood River is fully funded through the city through TRT dollars. And I think that it would be a first step to fund the chamber even more this time around. I would like to see the chamber be really be able to help the small businesses that aren't tourist related, so that they have the time. They didn't have the bandwidth, they didn't have the capacity to help businesses when this all first struck us in March. And I think that when we do get back on an even footing, that we should really consider fully funding the chamber with TRT earmark as well, so that we have both sides of the house helping We have the tourist dollars going towards tourism, and we have the chamber helping businesses and supporting them as our local partner.
All right, thank you. And Danny, the next question will be to you first. In your mind, what is the role of the mayor?
I think in the role of the mayor, the most important thing is to be setting goals for the city, to be listening, to be facilitating the needs of our community, getting that to a place where they have a seat at the table, so to speak, so that we are really not just dealing with policy, not just dealing with what the our projects that we're working on currently with city management. We really need to have more of a link to our community. We really do need to create ways that we can have community involvement right out the gate so that we don't get ourselves into these situations where we have so much discontent over a project because we didn't start early with community involvement.
All right, thank you. Kate?
So one of the roles, there's several roles that the mayor plays. One of them, you run the meeting. Secondly, we are one vote when we make decisions. So I always keep those in mind. I work with the city manager to kind of look at what's coming up in the future. And well, we're going to need to get this on the agenda or that on the agenda because these things are rolling forward. And I get emails and I get phone calls from constituents that are, you know, unhappy with this or extremely happy with this, whatever it might be. I try to respond to those, call them back, email them back, direct them to the particular place that they need to go to in the city to get that problem taken care of. I help be a liaison between those issues that they might have and the city manager or someone else within the city that they need to talk to. And just philosophical discussions with the other counselors, one-on-one, not on specific items that we have on the agenda, but just talk to all the different counselors at different times about different things.
15.
I think it's just having your ear open, as Danny said, having your ears open to listen to the people and what their concerns are. I think we try to follow the procedures that we have in a fair and open way for the public to give us information.
All right, thank you. All right, and now to you first, Kate. Some people say that livability is Hood River's competitive advantage. What does livability mean to you, and what role does city government play in ensuring the benefits of livability are widely distributed for the benefit of all?
Wow. I mean, I guess people, you know, I've lived here all my life. And so I think, you know, there were some people that said that, you know, when a few people moved in here in 1980, that it was not livable in 1985. And I don't believe that. I think that the people that moved here that early on, when it kind of gotten well known more, and as time has gone on, it's gotten more well known. But I think that all the people that live here bring a vibrancy to our community. Some people don't have as much money as other people. Some people desire to live in apartments. Some people desire to live in places they don't have a big yard to take care of. And some people want a huge yard with a big lot. You know, there should be room for every different type of things that people want and every different price range, so that all the people that do all the different kinds of work, that some pay a lot and some don't pay very much at all, can afford to live in the community if they work here. So, you know, I think livability is a huge range of things to different people. And I just want to make sure that you know, if some people think livability is a large yard and a large lot,
15.
that's fine, but other people feel that, you know, livability to me is not having an expensive house, because I can't afford an expensive house and I need to live here because I work here.
Great, thank you. And Danny?
I think that livability means different things to different people. I think that in Hood River, we are so lucky to be such a vibrant city in a rural part of Oregon. We're very, very fortunate. There are other small towns all over Oregon that are having a really tough time surviving. We have a beautiful geographical area. We have many beautiful amenities. We have all sorts of makers and business people who have created an amazing place to live, an amazing place to visit. I think that we do need to be very mindful when we are making plans for growth, because there are so many different needs, such a diverse population. We need to make sure that that livability really does include some of this. You know, when you live out in a rural area, you are used to the open spaces, you're used to having a little bit of elbow room. And even if you are living in a townhouse or an apartment or a duplex or even a single family home, it is important for us to make sure that we have parks available, so that even if you can get into a park and have that sense of open air and the vistas of the mountains and the hills, I think that that is what people enjoy here.
All right, thank you. All right, and Danny, this goes to you first. Government on any level, anywhere, is subject to some level of distrust. What can the city do to enhance public trust, and how important is transparency in government?
I think transparency is the single most important element of government. If you're looking to have your constituency trust you and believe that you're making good choices.
And are you done?
Yes.
Okay, I just didn't want to step on your time. Kate, do you please?
Sure. I think it's just, yes, there's distrusting a lot of government, and we need to be transparent. We need to follow the rules of meetings that are set forth by law. We need to have meetings that are more open. I know that since the Zoom meetings have been going on since COVID, we've had some additional people attend those. I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of people that have actually given us a lot of comment at those meetings, but we've had a few more people watch the meetings, which I think is a good thing. So I would say that, you know, doing that kind of thing would be great in the future. You know, I know that there's a lot of distrust in government, just especially on the federal level, then on the state level, and it goes down to the county level, and then here we are on the city level. But I think that as long as the rules are followed, that there's good, you know, you may have a 49 to 51 vote, and it may be that type of a vote on your council. You maybe have a very, very split vote, or you may not, and you may have a very, very split audience. And so when you come down on the 49% and it doesn't quite go your way, you kind of feel like you weren't listened to. And, you know, I do listen to everyone. And I think that the council we have has been listening to everyone, but I know it definitely, when it doesn't go your way, it does feel like you're not being listened to.
All right, this is our last question, and Kate, it goes to you first. Should the city support small businesses in the Heights by providing support for outdoor seating options, such as park lots or on sidewalks, as been done on Oak Street?
Could you read the very first part of that question again?
Actually, I'll read the whole question again.
Okay, thank you.
Should the city support small businesses in the Heights by providing support for outdoor seating options such as parklets or on sidewalks, as has been done on Oak Street?
I guess I'm going to say yes, but yes, but it is an ODOT road. ODOT owns it. The only way we were able to keep the parklets on Oak Street was because of a jurisdictional transfer from ODOT to the city. So the city now has jurisdiction from 13th to Front Street on Oak. And that's the reason we were able to keep the parklets. But ODOT has 12th and 13th Street on the Heights, and the city is eventually going to be looking at the possibility of whether the city would want to take over jurisdictional transfer of that area too. The city council's talked about this, but there is a lot of infrastructure that's not in the greatest of shape up there right now. And the city wants to know exactly what we would be taking on if we did that. So parklets are not going to be allowed by ODOT in those areas. And that's, you know, their jurisdiction right now. So we can't do anything about that.
All right, thank you. Danny?
I actually advocated for those parklets up in the Heights, and I understand that they were not, they weren't doable because of the ODOT facility that is 12th and 13th. I would hope that maybe we could make other options available for the restaurants. I'm very worried about the restaurants coming with the winter coming and so much uncertainty due to COVID. Businesses are struggling massively right now, and businesses that have been chugging along for decades and were having their best year ever, are now at a point where they feel like they're starting over and they don't know if they're going to survive. So I think it's definitely an issue that the city needs to address. If there is a way that maybe seating could be allowed on the sidewalk outside of the restaurants, that might be an idea that we could pitch. Taking on the responsibility of ODOT facilities, many in the community are very concerned about how the city will handle snow maintenance, snow removal. So that's another question that we should answer before we just give up on the benefit of having ODOT take care of our snow removal on our ODOT facilities during the winter.
All right, thank you. And that concludes the questions, and we'll now move on to the closing statements. And since Kate got to go first at the beginning, Danny, you get to go first now, and if you would, please.
Do I have 2 minutes?
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. This campaign season, my greatest joy is getting out and listening to our community talk about what they value about our city and what they would like changed. People from all walks of life have been very consistent about their needs. We are one community and we share the same concerns. Our city needs to work and respond to the needs of our entire community holistically. Our business community drives our economy, and their voices should be heard as it pertains to city policy. We have a diverse community that are interdependent upon the economy and working families and individuals' ability to obtain safe and affordable housing. We must act now to ensure that working family housing becomes a reality for Hood River. Open space and less density are part of what makes Hood River both livable and attractive to working families. As our community grows, our city government must plan wisely. The safety of our sidewalks, crosswalks, and intersection signalization must be addressed as soon as possible. Winter maintenance and snow removal needs to be a priority and is a large equity issue for workers and students in our community. I humbly ask for your vote to be elected to serve as your mayor. I will bring my experience as a hardworking small business owner and my perspective as a sixth-generation rural Oregonian. Having grown up in Hood River, I have a strong connection to our community. As a small business owner, I have spent the past 15 years working directly with the public to meet their needs. I understand and have experienced the same challenges that working families face as Hood River has changed and grown in the past couple of decades. I have spent the past 2 years committing myself to learn all I can about our city governance by attending meetings, researching, and having discussions with city council, committee members, staff, and our community. As mayor, I will work for the people of Hood River. I will continue to listen to our community and make community interests my priority. We need well-balanced, common sense, and inclusive decision-making as we grow our community.
All right, thank you. And Kate?
Again, thank you for letting us all be here to speak this evening. I was reminded of a slogan I saw downtown in April. It said, "We are all in this together." This is even more true now than ever. We can solve our problems if we include everyone in the discussion, in the solution, and we all come out better because of the consequences of our group collaboration. Our community has come together many times in the past. We even agreed to build a new high school in the early 70s, which was highly contentious for numerous years. We have Waterfront Park, which was pushed to fruition by citizens, donated by the port, built with grants and citizen fundraising, and now owned and maintained by the city. Great things can happen when we come together. This summer, citizens have risen to march in the streets to illuminate many social injustices that have been happening across the nation for a long time. I want to recognize publicly that we all are allowed the freedom to speak our minds without threatening others, and would hope that we are speaking to each other about how we can right injustices that have happened in the past and work to give everyone the same opportunities to live a peaceful and prosperous life in our community. We have a long history of social injustices, from our treatment of Indigenous people to Japanese internment camps. These types of social and racial injustice have carried into the modern era. My dad's family originally moved here from North Dakota during the Dust Bowl to pick fruit. He was treated well. Whether Black, arriving from another country, or speaking another language, we should all have the same opportunities to be treated equally. We need to celebrate our differences. We are not perfect human beings, but we should strive to be better than our history represents. I hope to represent that attitude through my work as your mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, both of you, for your participation tonight, for your willingness to run, your willingness to serve, the work that you do for the community in general. I apologize for a little snafu at the beginning. I'll own that completely. I'm surprised that when you talked about the role of the mayor, neither one of you talked about lighting the Christmas tree, because I think it's one of the official jobs. But having said that, and trying to bring a little levity to the situation, thank you very much. That'll conclude our section with the mayoral candidates.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kate, thank you, Danny, for joining us. We appreciate your time this evening. So again, folks, I'm going to take just a moment to promote the city council candidates to panelists
And actually, I'm going to take just a moment to get some notes in my computer, so I'll stay with you, but I need a minute to pull something, okay?
No problem. Thank you. Again, thanks so much for joining us tonight, ladies. And city council candidates, I will be promoting you. So be prepared for your cameras to turn on. Make sure I didn't miss anyone here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're all here. Thank you so much. Again, I'm going to take just a moment to welcome anyone that's just joining us or joined us during the mayoral forum. My name is Ashley Huckaby May. I'm the interim director for the Hood River County Chamber of Commerce, Visit Hood River. I want to thank you and welcome you for joining us on behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors. And I'd also like to thank moderator Paul Crowley for joining us tonight. He has volunteered his time, as well as our candidate panelists. So thank you for joining us and making time this evening. Paul, I'm going to hand this over to you and let you talk through the questions and some of the housekeeping.
And I want to make sure, do we have all of the candidates with us right now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh.
Okay, we are all here. All right. First of all, I'm going to talk to you about the order presentation, which we discussed a little bit earlier, but I'm not sure that everyone with us. That is going to be based on the following. And for reasons that we stated earlier, when we were, before the forum started, we'll start off with Mark, then move to Brian, Megan, Susan, Gladys, and Don, and then from there on, the order will remain the same, but then the second time around, Brian will go first, third time Megan, until everyone gets a chance to go first at some point in time. And then I'm going to start off with a confession. I urge each of you to give me 3 points to make it introducing you. You all did do that. I don't have that information immediately in front of me. I just tried to find it. Since we're running way ahead of schedule, I'm going to take liberty as the person in charge of time to expand your time an extra to a full 3 minutes if you want to make those points yourself. So we're not denying the opportunity to make those points. We're just putting them on you to make if you'd like to. All right, so you'll have up to 3 minutes to make an introductory comments. When we get to questions, it's 90 seconds. And then when we get to summation, it'll still remain 2 minutes. All right. So if everyone gets a chance to process that for a minute. Mark, you look like you're ready to go. Are you ready to go? All right, would you?
I'm ready to go. Thanks,
okay.
Paul. You know, it's hardly ever that a Z gets to go first, so you sort of threw me off right at the bat. So thanks to the Chamber for organizing the forum, and thanks to you, Paul, for being a moderator. This is great. I think it's super useful, especially in these days of Zoom. My name is Mark Zandmiller. It's been an honor to be on City Council for the last 2 terms and Council President for the last year. Being an active volunteer and elected official in Hood River has brought me joy for more than 25 years. I would love to continue for another term and feel that I have been a consistent and strong voice on Council. I believe that Hood River is a truly special place. As city leaders and advocates, we have the responsibility to build on what we have by engaging with the community, listening honestly, and continuously improving the way we do things. As city councilor, I will continue to think progressively, work hard, and act cooperatively to make Hood River better. I'm basically an optimist, and I always believe that we have real discussions we can reach consensus, and as a council and as a community. The $64 question, though, is how do we facilitate that positive, open discussion and getting inputs? This will be a continued focus for me, continuously improving communications. I'm proud of our city staff, led by City Manager Rachel Fuller. They're a great group of professionals who care deeply about Hood River. Giving them the tools, the resources, and the bandwidth to implement good solutions is a huge part of council's job. The most fascinatingly tricky thing about being on council is finding a way to balance the desire to do many things quickly, that's what we want, with the real staff bandwidth available. I encourage all of you to look at and become familiar with the council work plan, which defines the goals we set for the current year. It can be found on the city website. Current goals address housing, communications, active transportation, environment and energy, infrastructure, and parks. It's an aggressive list of things. I would be happy to go over the priorities setting process in our work plan document with anyone who would like to do so. You just reach out to me, we'll find a time. I do want to mention that COVID has, of course, impacted 2020, but the city has responded well and has been an important partner for helping community members in need and local businesses. I think that we have to be a little patient with it, setting stuff back, but but it hasn't changed our goals. It hasn't changed our plans. It's just a matter of schedule. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me just reset here. And Brian, it's on to you.
Thank you, Chamber, and thanks, Paul, for hosting. I'm Brian Toohey. I've lived in Hood River full-time since 1997, about 24 years. I'm a Northwest native, originally from Seattle, and I'm married to Elkie Toohey, and I'm a stepdad to a pretty great Hood River Valley High School junior. So I work in the automotive industry, mostly providing services to car dealers. I've been a competitive athlete in a handful of sports, including cycling and auto racing, and I've worked on the operational and logistics side of professional motorsports in risk management and coaching. My experience in politics is limited to having run for council 2 years ago and helping to coordinate the collection of signatures for the Parks Protection Measure 1467 that was passed last year by a huge margin. So I think one of the things that I'll add to council is going to be a focus on results. Now we state goals and really don't spend enough time, I think, defining what success looks like. I think goals are a great place to start, but they're just that. They're a start. So I think it's important to remember also that we're all here essentially interviewing for the job of city councilor. My priority will be to focus on the business and stated goals of the city. Our decisions will always be informed by what happens in the greater Gorge community and the valley, but they shouldn't be dominated by them. So emergencies may arise, and we should have pre-established systems in place to address those emergencies. I think this will help us focus on success within the city, which will be a benefit not just to Hood River residents, but to the entire region. I'm having a hard time not just looking around at you like you're all here sitting around the table and we're having a meeting. So anyways, what I do is first I determine what the barriers to accomplishing our goals have been, and then I would ensure that we establish systems with measurable expectations, and then, as been mentioned before, with respect to the city manager, is that I think I turn her loose to do her job and then provide the support necessary to meet the policy goals. So it is my view that we haven't been looking far enough forward.
15, Brian.
We haven't been looking far enough forward, which I think has pushed us into situations where we're forced to make some bad decisions, and I think we'll probably talk about it later, but most recently, I think that has been regarding housing and parks, and I think that these are really unnecessary self-inflicted wounds. So again, I think we need to establish—
I'm going to need you to wrap up, Brian.
Okay. I look forward to continuing the discussion. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome. And yeah, as to timing, folks, if I think someone's about to wrap up, I won't call 15 right away. But I am going to try to keep us reasonably within that time limit, but try to be flexible at the same time. And Megan, it's your turn.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Saunders. Originally moved to Hood River for an AmeriCorps job with the Hood River Watershed Group. I'm now the Watershed Project Manager with Farmers Irrigation District. After a few years in this community, I realized that the people here had really made Hood River my home. And so I have always in my life tried to live by the ethos of making the world a better place than we found it, whether that's my day job, volunteer work, personal life, and definitely as a city councilor. So I was honored to be elected 4 years ago, and I'm excited to be running for re-election. So I've spent the past decade making Hood River my home, and I've been honored to spend 4 years trying to make this community better and stronger. The city continues to struggle with affordability issues, making it harder and harder for young folks and young families, and the elderly and low-income folks at all stages to continue to call this place home. I believe it's critical to the health of our community and our economy that we work hard to ensure the city is accessible and welcoming to all community members, no matter their age or income, racial or cultural background, or skills and life experiences. I've worked hard with my fellow councilors, our partner agencies, and many members of the community to reduce barriers to building a diverse and accessible housing stock, to try to develop government subsidized affordable housing, to rebuild the children's park and improve our other community spaces, to continue tackling major improvements to our road, stormwater, water, and wastewater infrastructure, to increase community outreach and engagement, especially to historically disadvantaged populations, to develop local carbon-free energy that will reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and increase local resiliency to natural and man-made disasters, to make strides towards racial and social equity in city operations and programming, to maintain strong financial policies, and to improve transportation options throughout the city. We still have a lot of work to do to meet the needs and improve the lives of all members of this community, and I'd like to continue to do my part. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Megan. And Susan, as soon as I reset my clock, you're on. You're muted. All right, we'll start all over again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Johnson. I've been a resident of Hood River for, let's see, just shy, it's been 28 years, since 1992. Basically have been on city council, and after serving on city council from 2014 to 2018, and participating as one of the key leaders involved in passing a successful ballot measure for parks. I've decided to run for city council again. And I feel that my previous experience on council has given me a broad exposure to issues facing all members of our community. The recent ballot measure that went through last November demonstrated that I provide a perspective that is not adequately represented by our city council. And I believe that our city council will benefit from the balance that I can actually bring and restore. My background is well-rounded and unique. In addition to service on the city council, I have a bachelor's degree in both economics and nursing. And for over 20 years, I've worked in a wide variety of nursing leadership positions, which require the ability to organize and assess, prioritize, and problem solve in cooperation with others and diverse populations. I have worked with the elderly and have worked in surgery, recovery, employee health, and the correctional system. My service as a substitute teacher, former volunteer on the homeless shelter and residential treatment counselor, and a high school liaison, treatment counselor and a high school liaison for the next door further demonstrates my commitment to others. The combination of my education and hands-on experience prepares me to understand the needs of all segments of our community, and that includes the business community. I understand the need for economic growth and working within budget constraints. As an outdoor enthusiast, I believe that responsible land use planning must assure that we have new parks and trails to foster for the love that we have for the outdoors and for generations to come. We are at a critical threshold, and we know that that we need housing for all people of all ages and all walks of life. There are enormous pressures that are actually destroying our beloved city without reasonable constraints and without first providing important infrastructure like parks, roads, sidewalks, water, and schools. As we address these important decisions, and the process needs to be open and transparent, and it needs to include all residents. And basically, I want to make decisions. I don't want to make decisions for you. I want to make decisions with you.
All right, thank you. And I'm just trying to get rid of a distraction on my phone so I get the timing set up here. All right, Gladys, up to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gladys Rivera, and I'm running for City Council. I want to start off by letting you all know that as you look at this camera here, I'm the only woman of color, right? I was born and raised in Hood River, and I have a very different lived experiences than a majority of the folks here on this call tonight. And it is because of that. That is one of my strengths. On top of that, I work within healthcare. I was a part of the last 2 community health needs assessments. I know these systemic barriers. And I also, because of healthcare, I work in a way where we, as a healthcare system, all of the agencies get together, we identify barriers, we collaborate together. And I really believe that the city is missing in some of these groups, the Community Advisory Council, the Clinical Advisory Panel, so that we can continue to collaborate together to address some of these issues. Now, as a mother, I have 3 wonderful brown children that are growing up in this community. I do not want them to have the same barriers, the same struggles that I did growing up. I want them to have more opportunities than I did. I also want to be here to serve and to continue to show all the other Black, Indigenous, people of color, our youth, that we can be decision makers too, and we should. Having a council that is diverse in their perspective, their lived experiences, is what makes Hood River stronger. As I mentioned, I have this responsibility to my children to create a welcoming and inclusive environment for them and for all of us in this community. I really want to highlight that our differences make us better. That's it.
All right, thank you, Gladys. And finally, Don, to you.
Thanks, Paul. So my name is Don Herring. I spent the vast majority of my childhood growing up in White Salmon. I moved back to Hood River about 4 years ago, but I guess starting with my education, I received my Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Washington State. I then spent the vast majority of 10 years working in the lithium-ion battery industry, specifically on green energy. I spent the last 5 years working at Ford Motor Company, with the most recent project being the Ford Mach-E, which I think is going to get launched this year. And after that, in Michigan, we had 2 small children, and really decided that we wanted to move home. And I took an opportunity with In Situ about 4 years ago, and currently manage a team of brilliant engineers in the Advanced Development Group, where we're responsible for writing proposals and generating essentially projects that involve compromise between In Situ and everybody from international partners to universities. And so I plan on leveraging that strong technical background as well as a good experience writing proposals and bring that technical experience to City Council.
Great, thank you. Before we move on to the questions, I'm going to address a point that someone just raised. Why don't I just flash a card that says 15 to people when their time is running? And the reason is I'm noticing half the people aren't looking at me because they're looking at notes and reading. And so I'm kind of used to, as a judge, sometimes saying wrap it up. So I'm trying to do it as gently as possible, but that's why. The best way to do it is by verbal. And then Ashley, a question to you. It is apparent to me that we have 8 questions. We can probably just power through all of them. I think that we're good on time, don't you?
I agree.
Okay. So Brian, you get to go first this time. And I'm going to start off with one of the 2 questions that the 2 of you, excuse me, that all of you got. And that is, what are your top priorities as a candidate and how do you plan to achieve them? You're on mute, Brian.
Yeah, I'm new to this. Can you tell?
Your time started. We'll start your time all over again. Brian, would you like to answer that question?
I would love to. Thank you for your understanding of my technological challenges. So I think I'm going to pull from the city's goals. I'm going to pull from first housing. We have so many opportunities to do things about housing and so many different ways to pursue that. And we don't have time tonight if that was the only subject. We have the housing needs analysis that was mentioned earlier, I think, in the mayoral section, and there were specific strategies and actions in that housing needs analysis that have not been addressed, a huge majority of those actions. And my concern now. So first of all, we should go straight to those and address those. My concern is that we're in the process of changing direction on housing by adopting the provisions of House Bill 2001. And I'd love to dig into that more, but that would cause a blanket upzoning without requiring parking in residential areas potentially. And this was presented to the council, this wasn't directed by council, but it was—
Ryan, you got 15.
Okay, it was directed, it was brought to us from the planning director. I want council to take control of this, go back to the housing needs analysis, do what it recommended, and that would be the start.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
Yeah, I value this community being a place where neighbors from all walks of life can get to know each other, care for each other during hard times, and celebrate milestones together. Without enough housing in a variety of sizes and styles and at a variety of prices, our neighborhoods and our neighbors will suffer. It is absolutely critical that we create a diverse and accessible housing stock that will allow our low-income and middle-income neighbors to stay in this community. Addressing our housing issues will require the allocation and the acquisition of more funding, continued changes to city code to remove barriers and create incentives for building the types of housing we need, continuing to remove barriers in our development review process, and increase partnerships with the state, county, and local partners to develop a strong portfolio of opportunities. Creating a strong and vibrant future for this community will also involve addressing our infrastructure needs in an equitable manner that finds the right balance between existing and future development, between generations, and between competing priorities, as well as improving our community spaces to improve the mental, physical, and economic well-being of community members. We should be making efficient use of the infrastructure already in place, continuing, and where possible increasing, our acquisition of state and federal funding, ensuring annexation of urban development, and creating systems for land acquisition. I'm all set. Paul.
Okay, great, thank you. Susan?
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, the question, this is the #1 question, right?
Yes.
What are your top priorities? Top priorities. My first priority would be to be inclusive and fair, giving an equal opportunity to all of those to be heard on important issues and decision making. One of the goals back in 2014 when I was on council was community involvement, relations, communication, community building, community building. This should be a priority of council, and I think that they need to kind of adjust their goals and change their goals, because I think they have some really good goals that they're working towards, but I think that they need to be adjusted. I really feel that you need to include the community more. I think that sometimes it seems like when I was on council, it kind of seemed like we weren't listening to people in public hearings. I don't feel that, using or, doing the limited amount you have to do, like a public hearing, to meet legal requirements. I think you need to bring people in more, and you need to put them on committees, and a committee like outreach committees, or create committees like the DCLD recommends. And it's in their guidelines, goal 1, which is one of ours on the Planning Commission.
All right. I'm going to address something that just came up, and that's with respect to the questions. There's 6 of you, and by the time we get to the 5th or 6th person, they may say, what exactly was the question? So do feel free, if you want me to restate the question, to have me restate it, because there is a group there. And now, Gladys, it's your turn.
It's hard to just say which one is my top priority, because there's many. So I will definitely stick with affordable housing, just as all the other counselors are mentioning. It's important that we're also looking, not necessarily just the middle housing, but we're really looking for low income housing as well. To do that, we really need to make sure that we're including diversity, equity, and inclusion training for our city staff, all of those who work within the city, with the hopes that community partners will follow, so that we have better understanding of where people at in their lived experiences. The third one is that we really need to incorporate mental health services within our police force. We cannot have our police officers responding to certain situations where they're not trained to handle that.
All right, thank you. Don? You're muted.
Did the same thing everybody else did. Darn it. Okay. So the question is, what are my priorities? So first, I think it's really important that we protect our services, so ensure that we have adequate staffing across police, fire, and EMS. I agree with everything Gladys said, actually, but mental health workers will not respond unless police is there, so we have to bolster the police force if we want to have, and I agree that we need to have mental health response there. Second priority is to continue to promote small business, including solving the downtown parking issue. With COVID, I mean, you guys have seen all the businesses around town that have continued to go out of business. I think they need help. So when I built this platform, I reached out and talked to as many community members as I possibly could. And specifically in the small business community, they had issues with everything from, well, specifically with the building department seemed to be a big snag. So I'd like to address these. With regards to parking, we've done 4 studies. I think it's time for action. So I'd like to solicit bids for a parking structure rather than paying for an architectural study, and then evaluate which bid comes in the best, that will best serve the city's needs. I also think that we should, look at a joint project with the port for adding parking across 84, and then aggressively protect our parks and expand it intelligently.
All right, thank you. And Mark, it's up to you.
All right. I want to try to hit on 3 things: housing, open space, and equity. First, for housing. Everyone has to remember that in almost all cases, housing is provided by the private market on private land. So the city's role is really to manage the rules so that that's done in as good a way as we can. There's some great work actually being done related to missing middle housing that'll make it to code in the next months. I fully support the goal of encouraging these creative housing forms, whether it's cottage code or whatnot, that will allow more options. We recently updated the ADU code, which is part of this effort, and it resulted in increased applications for that type of housing. Closely related to this, staff is working on building permit processes to make it simpler and more efficient. These are examples of continued improvement that I highly support. Open space, we finally finished this big master plan, super important. And I think I personally want to make it a priority to start acquiring the land we need for greenways and parks before the building pressure says, oh, that one's gone already. So I think that's super important. And finally, equity. I think that I'm looking forward to the discussion about equity with the community, local partner agencies, and nonprofits. We can do better societally, personally, and as a community. And that's just 3 of them. So.
All right, thank you. I believe, Megan, it's your turn to go first now. And the question reads, the 2019 Community Health Needs Assessment reminds us that transportation is the highest unmet need as part of our built environment in the gorge. Data on diverse populations shows that about 1 in 5, 19%, of people cannot access basic needs such as healthcare or food due to transportation barriers. What should be done to address that problem? And then before you respond, that question is originally submitted, and the question is originally submitted, excuse me, concluded with, how will you demonstrate a commitment to support public transportation? The chamber representatives decided to open the question to include, and are there other measures you would support to address the issue? All right, when you're ready.
Lack of transportation to critical services needs to be addressed both immediately with the provision of transportation options and in the long term with the development of sufficient housing in close proximity to critical services. As a counselor, I've supported our partner, Columbia Area Transit, through the allocation of funding in each fiscal year. CAT has made major strides in the last few years to increase services and route coverage and expand routes. Given the size of our community and potential ridership, CAT will likely always need some subsidization to maintain routes that work for people at a cost that works for people. I'm committed to continuing to support CAT as a critical service to city residents and businesses. The city has also been working to expand and connect sidewalks and bike routes to improve non-vehicular options for folks in close enough proximity and who are physically able. This work will need to continue with the allocation of resources, acquisition of outside funding, and the support of future developers. At a more fundamental level, people, especially people with transportation challenges, should be located near critical services to make those services more accessible. The development of multifamily and mixed-use housing in all of the city's commercial districts, as well as more efficient usage of our R3 high-density residential land, will increase the number of housing units in and near critical services, reducing transportation barriers to accessing those services.
All right, thank you. And Susan, when you're ready. Susan, can you hear me?
I think she's frozen.
She's actually gone. All right. I'll tell you
Looks
what,
like she dropped off. So
yeah,
I'll
tell you
keep
what
an
I'm
eye.
going to, how about if I move over to Gladys and then get back to Susan when she pops back in? If that works for everybody? Okay, so
Thank you.
Gladys, it's up to you.
Thank you. I was actually a part of, as I mentioned earlier, both of these last community health needs assessments, so I'm very aware of the systemic barrier. Now, I could go on and name some of the points that Megan highlighted as to what we're already doing, so I think I'm going to go ahead and challenge myself on the spot to think even bigger right now. The Next Door does a fantastic job of helping locals by establishing and developing businesses. So why don't we ask the Next Door to help us with this? How can we help incentivize one of our locals within our community to help them build their own transportation service besides CAT, what we already have in our area, because we know that that's not enough. We need more fixed routes. We don't have them at this time. So what else can we do within our community so that we are incentivizing folks by maybe helping them get a vehicle for free to start that business, but that we are continuing to collaborate with our community partners who already have some of these programs. Let's just help identify some people that would benefit, and they can help us with part of this barrier, the systemic barrier that we have affecting our community.
All right, thank you. And Susan, we just changed the order, realizing that you had a technical problem. You still obviously got a chance to answer the question, and your opportunity is now.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I'm sorry about that. It's the internet. Anyways, okay, so I'm going to start with the Columbia Gorge Health Council produced the Community Health Needs Assessment Plan, which is the CHIP, which addresses the issue and problem in question. So the work is completed. It needs, let's say, I guess it would be the, if the needs of the community are met, there needs to be a plan to be able to put into action. And I would encourage partners in the community to work together from committees within the region and partner up with committees and groups, for example, Providence, One Community Health, the Next Door, or even local churches to help come up with solutions for these issues. I would also include the Hood River Transportation District, which is CAT, to be involved with the plan. They would be a great resource and partner in finding these solutions that we're having. As for the city of Hood River, I would say that they need to continue to support and address the issue by continuing to provide and maintain the essential infrastructure, such as roads, accessible sidewalks, improvement towards compliance with the ADA guidelines, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, such as bike lanes, and then someday towards a park system. Lastly, we need to start rebuilding our community and communities. We need to turn off our TVs, turn off our computers, go take a walk, know your neighbors, ask if they need help, and see if they need a ride to an appointment or if you could pick something up for them and just be a part of the solution.
All right, thank you. And Don, it's your turn.
All right, I agree with just about everything Susan just said. I think it's critical to continue to build community partnerships, specifically with the hospital systems that are in place, as well as the additional services. I do think the CAT is a critical service. I think we will continue to have to supplement it. In terms of the 20% population that's currently underserved, I think that we could look at optimizing the routes and optimizing the schedule to best suit those needs as well. So starting to look at where the problem is and then addressing it from there.
All right, thank you. And Mark?
Yep. I think this topic really nicely touches on the interconnectedness of all of our efforts. Council actively supports improving transportation in the following ways. One is being a good partner with our friends at CAT and Mid-Columbia Economic Development District, who are both active in public transportation. They have an active mission, and we can help them strengthen their pieces of the puzzle. I'm currently on the MCED board and see firsthand how hard they are working on transportation issues. When we're successful enabling the building of sub-median income housing, folks with higher service needs will be closer to the transportation and service providers. The purchase of the Rand Road property will lead to such development. 3 is our transportation system plan update that's in work now. Includes new focuses on facilitating active transportation. How do we tie everything together in a more creative way? Our safe routes to school efforts and city bike routes will provide safe ways for people to navigate that'll help take the load off the transportation stuff. And our helping the downtown farmers market puts this critical source of local food next to transportation hubs. So by looking at all the different pieces that we do work on, we can dramatically help the providers of these transportation services.
Great, thank you, Mark. And finally, Brian, your turn.
Thanks.
Nice job on unmuting, by the way.
Yeah, I'm going to get the hang of this. Just I'm going to make myself a checklist, and I'm going to become a pro in no time.
All right, I'll start your time now. Go ahead.
Okay. So I agree with the sentiment that we would all benefit from expanded, regularly scheduled service. I think that that's an important thing, and it'll be a big piece here. I think this question was originally framed as a healthcare question, and I want to address that. And so the 19%, I read through the documents. I think that came through, and the community health improvement plan addresses transportation. So a couple things, the underserved people, if we're talking about Medicaid people, CAT does have Dial a Ride, and they've got, and Medicaid covers medical and I think non-medical transportation needs for their members. But this is an example of something that isn't necessarily the way it's framed. This isn't exactly a city thing. That 19%, that's not the city. That's a regional thing. That includes counties in Washington and Oregon. And I think that in the city of Hood River, I think maybe we're not doing so bad. And I think the same is the case with the Dalles, as Mark said, would be, because of MCED's efforts. So anyways, I'm very much supportive of the expanded routes, and housing is a big part of that. And I hope that we're able to address all of those things effectively. And like I mentioned before, we've had opportunities for housing, and we're missing them.
All right, thank you. And Susan, it's your turn to go first this time. Should the city support small businesses in the Heights by providing support for outdoor seating options such as parklets or on sidewalks, as has been done on Oak Street?
You know what? I would love for that to be done, because I think that we would be supporting those businesses, especially during this time with COVID going on. Our businesses need all the help they can get. But I want to get back to what somebody was talking about earlier. I believe it was Kate, but that our infrastructure isn't up to par up in the Heights. And I'm just going to go back to something that I think it's really important that we actually address this, because I think that this is something that needs to be done. This is infrastructure that needs to be done. It's been has needed to be done or completed for a while. And so I'm thinking that maybe we should start looking into that and maybe taking some money and putting it into our infrastructure instead of other things.
Okay, thank you. Gladys? You're on mute. You're on mute, Gladys. Can't unmute. Okay. All right. While you're working on that issue,
I'm working on it.
You got it. There you go. Ready to go?
Oh, I'm working on it for Gladys.
Oh, Ashley's working on it. All right. In the meantime, may I shift over to Don?
Yeah, I got it.
All right. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I would absolutely like to ask the small businesses in the Heights first if that's something that they need. And if that's the case, I would 100% support it. I do think that we're probably going to have to look at opening up additional parking, especially on 13th. A lot of that in front of the business parking is utilized on the weekends specifically. So we could look at opening up additional parking, perhaps down the side roads. I think that would be at least a viable option, but yeah, I'd start with asking them what their needs are first, and then support their needs.
All right, thank you. Gladys, let's do a sound check first. Can you unmute at this point?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. So,
Perfect, awesome.
Your turn to answer the question. Go ahead, please.
All right, so as we know, the city does not own the Heights, does not own 12th and 13th. So I think, yes, I want to definitely figure out ways that we can support those businesses, especially now that knowing that we're going into the winter. We are still in a pandemic. We're still going through COVID. We still need to have all these additional safety precautions for our community members. So to be quite honest, I think we have to just get together and figure out how can we do that, knowing that we don't own the street, knowing that there are infrastructure problems. What can we do right now so that we can help meet those needs? And again, just bringing business owners in. I will fully admit that I am the newest member on council. There's a lot that I still don't know that could be potential barriers. So let's bring in some of these business owners and let's brainstorm, let's collaborate together to figure out what we can do to offer more support for them.
All right, thank you. And Mark, when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of the parklet thing and finding other clever ways to help the businesses in the Heights is great. Working with ODOT stuff, it just really burns my toast sometimes. That you know, there's rules that they're there for a reason, and that's good, but there's other rules that are there for reasons that don't help us in Hood River. So finding out whether we can take over the Heights and eventually is a great thing to do. But it's a constant dance that we have to do with ODOT. Bigger picture for the Heights, we do have an urban renewal district in the Heights that has been saving up a pot of money, and council and the urban renewal advisory committee and multiple community groups have joined together to ask the city to do a really high-end master view of what should the Heights look like 30 years from now, and how do we do it. And the city has been set back a little bit by COVID, but I think, you know, that process is going to start, and it's absolutely critical that we get broad community input. So the businesses in the Heights, the people in the Heights, the people in Hood River saying, what do we want the Heights to look like? How do we fix the infrastructure? How do we address that it's almost impossible to ride a bike past you know, across 12th and 13th? These are really neat things that we have to do correct for the community. So,
all right, thank you. Before I move on, I'm going to address a pop-up question that just came from one of the candidates about who's already spoken, said, may I add something else later on? And the answer is yes, but this is how you can do it. The rules that we're working under is if if you want to go back to a question that's already been answered by yourself, you can do that in the next 90 seconds, but it eats into that 90 seconds, or you can do it in your summation. So those are your opportunities to respond. If someone says something or you think of something, do it in the next question, but it eats up your time, or do it in your summation. All right, and then Brian, I'll reset and it's your turn.
So I have a couple of small businesses, and many of my customers are other small businesses. And this was a point of concern for me when we went through the first, back in March and April as we were working our way through the COVID thing. And so we need to have plans in place for when something, in this case, that I would consider inevitable happens, and that's going to be another shutdown or some sort of an event. And I think Donna is absolutely correct. I mean, you go and ask the businesses, but this is, it's October 7th, and there aren't provisions made and plans already in place for how we're going to support those businesses when this happens. I'd hate to see another case where city council gets together, decides to shut something down, and then is going to meet again in 2 weeks to find out what happened. The businesses that stayed open when this thing happened did pretty well. And I think we owe that to the businesses that have suffered at this point, just to make a plan, get them involved. And I think really that ought to start tomorrow.
All right, thank you. And then Megan, when you're ready.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so with COVID and kind of big picture, I and the rest of City Council have worked really hard with the limited resources we've had available to support the business community, create flexibility, add capacity, find out ways to make the spacing work in this kind of new world we're probably going to be in for the next year or so. So that included the parklets that we've allowed. That was the the pickup zones. That was allowing the food carts to stay without having to deal with the county health department when everyone's kind of in a panic. Just creating flexibility and supports. As you know, we tried to do the parklets up on the Heights and Oak Street, and there was kind of the snafu. So we were able to move a little quicker on Oak Street, where that's already been repaired and paved. And there was kind of a set timeline with ODOT of how they're going to do all the ADA upgrades at each intersection. We were able to work through how they're going to help us with snow removal, how we're going to operate day to day, so that it's not a major cost on the city and we kind of know what we're buying. The Heights, where it's older, there hasn't been good pavement or infrastructure upgrades. There's just a lot more we have to work through with ODOT before we can say, yes, it's a good choice for the city long term to take on 12th and 13th. I'm hoping we're working through that. It's certainly something council said we want. Oh, thank you. We want staff to do, but in the meantime, I think it's continuing to figure out what supports the businesses need and how we can help them.
All right, thank you. And Gladys, you get the next question first. In your mind, what is the role of a city councilor?
Thank you. That's a great question. I love what I do. I'm in a position where I am out in the community talking to folks. Usually it's about COVID education, and I'm wearing my mask as I'm doing so. That to me is what a city councilor should do. Any decision maker, any leader should be out in the community talking to folks, because you're trying to figure out from them, what is it that you're trying to change? So you're a constant bridge. You're the interpreter of the system, how it works. You're establishing trust with your community so that you hear from them. They come to you with the issues that matter to them most, and that you're trying to collaborate with other community partners, other counselors to bring that you are looking at how can I create a welcoming and inclusive environment for us all so that we can all live and play together, believe or respect each other's opinions, as far left or far right as they are, that we are the mediators between how we continue to move forward together.
All right, thank you. Mark?
I thought it was Don, but.
I'm sorry, you know what? It would be if I was doing this in correct order. Thank you. Not my first mistake of the day. Don, would you like to address that question?
Paul, I think I'm off mute. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I'd absolutely like to address that question. I think that the role of the city councilor is to serve the will of the people. When I decided to run, I went out and surveyed as many people as I could find and built an online platform that was available to everybody I talked to. And so I think that serving the will of the people and understanding what their wants and needs are is the key role. With regards to the previous question, I do think we also need to aggressively pursue capital that's available from the federal government through the CARES Act or the HEROES Act, and write proposals to help aid our local small businesses and shore up our infrastructure if that funding is available as well. But fundamental role of the city councilor is to understand the wants of the people and to execute on their wishes.
Great, thank you. Mark, thank you for that assist, and now it's your turn.
I think that they're absolutely right that one of the key roles of the counselor is to be a conduit to the people, and that's a two-way conduit. So I'm communicating, why is the city doing this? Why is the city asking these questions? And being an active, very open listener to, what are the concerns of the people that we interface with. I think that that's super important. Being very prepared to discuss the things that come up for business of the city is very important, because the discussion we have between counselors at the meeting has to be focused and detailed, because we're going to work together and hopefully find a collaborative agreement to each of these issues. So if each city council meeting has 10 things on the agenda, that's 10 things we have to be smart about, to be willing to compromise our positions on, as long as it's in the best interest of the city. That discussion is just, it's fascinating and important. So I think those are things that I try to bring to every discussion outside of council and in council. So.
Great, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I think it's council's primary function is to set the course, and I think that we've got a certain responsibility to ensure that the goals that we make are achieved, and certainly being a conduit to the community and having on your finger on the pulse, so to speak, is super helpful. I think it looks to me the biggest challenge is that the packets that council gets are pretty substantial, and you're not going to be able to really make much sense of those things without a background and a lot of other background and research to understand things that are important and things that are going to be factors when you try to implement these policies and provide direction to the city manager to accomplish things. And again, I think that this is something that's popped up in our housing challenges, and but again, I think that the primary thing is to set the course and then make sure that the course is followed.
All right, thank you. Megan.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone touched on this, but absolutely critical role is to be the conduit between the public and city staff and the rest of council. All of us, of course, interact in different parts of this community, and so we hear different feedback, different concerns, different joys, different questions, and it is our job to bring those back and collaborate together to figure out what makes sense for this whole community. How do we address all of these different concerns in the best way with limited resources? I do think this community is really special in that we are small enough that everyone in this community can run into their city councilors at the grocery store or on the street, or give them a call and just talk in a way that certainly larger cities don't have the opportunity for. So it's always fun to talk to folks from the community and be able to learn what is and isn't working, or what's confusing, or what needs some more attention. With all that said, yes, everything we're taking that feedback and what we're working on together is to set policy direction for the city, for city staff, how we want to work with partners. And it is absolutely incumbent on us as the elected officials to try and build the relationships with our other partner agencies, county, port, school district, everyone else, to work together to meet regional needs and community goals together.
All right, and Susan.
Okay, at City Council, I would define it as a legislative body that makes decisions for the community. And I think that you need to involve that community because they are the ones that actually elected you and put you there. So basically, we would be working for the community. So you definitely need to listen to them. Let's say they focus on goals, long-term, short-term, and they also implement policies, and they deal with land development, capital improvements, etc. I think some really important stuff that a city councilor does is actually, like I said, implement policy. But the biggest thing for me is that you make sure that you implement those primary things that a city's supposed to do. And that's going to be your public safety and your infrastructure.
All right, thank you. And Don, it's finally your turn to go first.
How about that, huh?
And the question is, some people say that livability is Hood River's competitive advantage. What does livability mean to you, and what role does city government play in ensuring the benefits of livability are widely distributed for the benefit of all?
That's a good question. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of livability is A, cost of living, B, access to key resources, right? So you have to be able to afford where you're going to live, and then you have to have access to healthcare, food, and necessary resources. You also need to have a place to work. So the role that City Council can play in supporting livability in the community, I think A would be to help keep help ensure that there is some affordable housing. And we've already touched on CAT, so that's access to resources. We got to make sure that and then finally, we got to make sure that we continue to promote our small businesses so people do have places to work. I also think that one of the things that makes Hood River really unique is our access to just a great number of small businesses, and not everything is a chain restaurant or a super center. I think that's one of the things that makes this community really special. And so we as City Council can continue to support those businesses and then access to critical resources, as well as affordable housing.
All right, thank you. And Mark.
I really love Hood River. I mean, this place is just so nifty. I think that livability is very much up to, the definition is up to each person. To me, it means having a sense of comfort in your place, that this is your place. And for different people, that's different things. Our job as city councilors is to try to make sure that we're facilitating that sense of inclusion and that sense of support that everyone can have. I personally love the scale of Hood River. And so to me, things that I want to focus on are the walkability stuff, the greenways between where we build housing and where we recreate and where we work and where we shop. I want to facilitate housing types that are available for the below median income and the at median income and the next step above that, and that they are all connected to these same amenities that we appreciate. How can you get to Safeway? How can you get to downtown? How can you get to Rosars? So to me, it's that sense of place, that sense of scale, and how can we be responsive to as we grow, because we're growing, that we're going to maintain that stuff. So that's
great. Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I think livability is pretty well addressed in the city's goals. I think that it's pretty clear that the people that are sitting at the table now have a pretty good idea of the components of what that is. And as others have said, that means that, you know, everybody has a little bit different priority about these things. You know, in our case, you know, Mark just mentioned the parks and the trail network. And my concern is that we haven't developed the framework. Even though we've got a parks master plan, we haven't set up a system and haven't even begun to address the funding for these parks. And now we find ourselves in a situation where we've got a housing issue that's gone more or less unaddressed for many years. So, you know, again, I think, you know, everybody's idea of livability, I think, is addressed by current goals. Housing is the one that comes up the most often, and parks and a park system is going to be a part of being able to make that happen. I'd really like to see us be getting on with it and being pretty assertive about making sure that we can make all these things happen.
All right, thank you. Megan?
Yeah, I think everyone's touched on this, but livability definitely means slightly different things to different people, but I think for everyone it is basically comes down to why they love this community. And in my case, that's certainly because of the actual community of people here. So livability is the fact that everyone can be here. We have this diverse and vibrant and kind of astounding community. And I think it's absolutely part of City Council's job to try and increase or at least maintain livability in this town. So that definitely includes supporting the diverse housing types that we need so that everyone can live here. That definitely includes supporting our most vulnerable community members so that they are not just surviving here, but they can actually thrive here. That very much includes, you know, parks and public spaces. That includes access to all the programs that I might enjoy, but someone else might not be able to. And so it's just creating a space where everyone really kind of gets to live their, and this is super lame to say, but live their best life. And I think that is something we've been working really hard to do. And I think it's something we have a lot more work to do because it's just gonna take constant energy to keep moving forward.
All right, thank you. And Susan?
Livability to me is basically, it's like a sum of factors, basically. And basically it's the quality of life, and everybody's definition of that is different, as we know. But basically it's, I think that our livability is everybody. It's inclusive, and I think that, you know, everybody has to work together so that it's livable, the area is livable. And I think the best way to do that is, especially in your environment, is to basically have your parks, have everything connect, because everybody should have those types of things to go enjoy, I guess you could say, because that adds to the health of your area. And I think that, and I'm saying this because I'm a nurse, I know how important it is to be outdoors. And then as for housing, yes, we do need a variety of housing, because we not only need it for low income, we also need it for the elderly. And I think that's something to look at. And I think that's something, when it comes to livability, I think that all of us need to look at that, and then, you know, address it as it goes, and then see, see what people can afford, I guess you could say. So my big concern is actually the elderly. So I know somebody that says he doesn't know if he's going to be able to continue to live here because he's being basically taxed out of his home. So is that livable?
15.
To me, that's not livable. So, and I'm going to end on that. I'm good.
Okay. Ashley, let me check in with you on something right now. We have arguably 3 questions left. We could continue on and then do the closings, which are going to take us probably up to 9 o'clock, or we could go to 1 or 2 more questions. What is your preference at this point as the person in charge?
I would say let's do 1 more question and then allow time for summations if the council candidates agree.
Is that okay?
Agreement with that?
All right, so the questions, we went over this earlier, the questions.
I still didn't get to answer the last question that was addressed.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gladys. Let me,
Oh.
I'll get to that in just a second.
Sorry.
But you got a chance to answer the question. The questions were numbered by myself. Ashley doesn't have access to the order they are. So I'm going to have her pick by number the last question to be answered by the candidates, but only after Gladys gets a chance to answer the last question. So Gladys, when you're ready.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's okay. Livability to me is an equitable sense of belonging, equitable sense of community, equitable built environment, equitable access and addressing of social determinants of health, equitable environmental justice, and housing that is diverse of all socioeconomic statuses.
Okay, thank you. That was succinct. All right, so Ashley, speaking to you, your options are numbers 6, 7, or 8.
All right, let's go with 6.
Okay. For a moment of levity, a 4-year-old joke. Does anyone know why 5 and 6 are afraid of 7? Gladys.
Because 7, 8, 9, right?
Correct.
Is that what it is? Yes.
It is.
My kids told me that.
All right. Okay, with that, we will go on to question unit. You picked number 6, correct? If presented with the opportunity to allocate COVID relief funds like the city did in September, what sectors are your top priorities in the second round? For example, nonprofits, housing or shelter support, business grants, and support for small businesses. Mark, I think we're back to you at this point.
Okay, is that right? Okay, sweet. Last time we received about $150,000 that we could distribute to the community out of the CARES fund stuff. And it's a really hard decision. You know, there were some, you know, needs on the people that needed the most needs, and then there were the businesses that we know are hurting. When we talked about how do we equitably help businesses, you know, we said, okay, are there grants? There's 150 businesses and $150,000. Is $1,000 a business make a difference? So I think this next round, so we went with United Way and child care support and homeless shelter stuff to address some real and utilities payments support. I think this next round, and I really hope we get it, we should talk to the chamber and other business people about, you know, how could a chunk of money most help businesses? You know, is it PPP stuff, or is it grants that would be given to some and not others, or is it a general, you know, help the chamber and they'll help everyone? So I think it's a great discussion, and I look forward to it. I hope that we get a big pot of money to do just that. Okay.
All right, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, so I was very supportive of making sure that the shelter had what they had asked for to be able to operate. I volunteer there a little bit, and I think that's an important service, and I hope that they're able to sort out how they're going to operate this year. You know, with respect to knowing how to spend it without having a specific plan for what we're going to do if there is another event that requires restrictions, it's hard to know. So, I mean, really that gets back to having planned ahead of time so that you don't have to guess where these things are going to go. My gut tells me that childcare is a great place for that, just because my preference would be for businesses to be able to operate, for there to be a plan in place for that to happen. And the biggest barrier for, I think, businesses to be able to operate is possibly going to be employees that have got children that require care. So I'm tended, if you were going to make me pick a direction to go right now, I'd say I want a plan first, and then I would send it that way.
All right, thank you. Megan.
Yeah, so in the city allocated our first round of CARES Act funding, and I think as a group we really kind of went with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of food, water, shelter as the priority. And so most of the money did go to shelter services to make sure we've got places for our folks struggling with homelessness this winter. Went to utility assistance to try and keep people in their homes so they're not facing foreclosure. And then went to the United Way Community Fund to support nonprofits and individuals struggling with COVID costs. We did, a much smaller scale, we did do some support for the chamber to try and help businesses, and also support for childcare services to maintain operations during COVID. I've been advocating for spending more money. We have a pot that might be available, and I'm hoping we get more CARES Act or whatever the new version will be from the state and the federal governments. And I think if we've sufficiently, or more sufficiently, addressed some of these kind of basic needs to make sure people aren't dying in the streets, I absolutely want to make sure that we are supporting more childcare. Even before COVID, we knew this was a childcare desert, and making sure we're supporting businesses with more money if we actually have sufficient amount available to make an equitable program that works for folks. I think there's a lot of need, and we need to make sure we're using it wisely.
Great. Thank you. Susan, you're on mute.
Will you repeat that question for me real quick, please?
Yes, as soon as I get my glasses on. Sorry, I got my papers in a disorder. The question is, if presented with the opportunity to allocate COVID relief funds like the city did in September, what sectors are your top priorities in the second round? For example, nonprofits, housing or shelter support, business grants, and other business support.
I'm going to have to go with business grants and business support because I think some of these other things fall underneath there. When you talk about food, water, and shelter. So basically your people that are working for some of these businesses aren't going to have food, water, or maybe even shelter. So I think you need to kind of look at those things too. I think they're really important. And I think that we need to keep our economy going. So we definitely need to support our businesses. As for shelter, I think that was a good call for council to do what they did to help out with that. And then let's see, what was the other one? I think the other ones were good too, because I think childcare falls underneath all that as well. I think they did a good job actually with prioritizing, but I would have probably put businesses in there more towards the top.
All right, thank you. Gladys?
Thank you. As Megan mentioned, and Mark, we did come upon this decision. It was challenging to figure out how we were going to distribute the dollars equitably amongst the businesses. So I think moving forward, I would focus on businesses, but also collaborating with the chamber so that we can figure out what specifically do business owners need. As Brian mentioned, do they need daycare for their staff to be able to come to work? So I think we could get a little smarter about the way how we allocate some of those dollars. So it would be towards businesses. I would still give money for nonprofits, as we know folks are still hurting. Some of those business owners or the employees of the business owners are going to be lining up for some of the services that the United Way can continue to help. So I would continue to fund United Way businesses, and that we also continue to help our homeless population.
All right, thank you. And then Don, to you.
All right. So I'd want to take a really good look at what sort of funding was available in the bill before we just allocate funds. So, for example, if small businesses are really bolstered in the bill, and then we're allocated money, I'd want to take a look and see first, are our small businesses getting what they need from the bill, and then as everybody else mentioned, pretty aggressively pursue childcare. My wife is a nurse at Providence. They're pretty well sorted for PPE, but she's also the vice president of Little Feet Co-op in town. And let me tell you, it's the cost of the childcare that's driving everyone away right now. So how do we supplement that with some of these co-ops and make childcare not only more available, but more affordable? If you're going to be the second parent going to work and you're looking at your paycheck and you're like, I'm going to have to spend all of this just to put my kids into childcare, you'd probably rather spend that time at home with your kids. I'd like to give everybody that option, but first and foremost, let's make sure we're getting everything from the bill. Let's aggressively pursue grants, and then not dish out money in a vacuum. Let's see which areas of the community are well covered in the bill, and then adjust our allocation accordingly. And obviously shelter as we head into winter, that's absolutely critical.
Great, thank you very much. So that concludes the question portion of this part of the program, and we'll move into the summations. You each have 2 minutes to wrap up whatever it is you want to talk about. And I think, Brian, it's your turn now.
Okay, well, thanks. This was fun. It was nice to see everybody. Yeah, I guess I would like to see, and what I think I can offer to this council is a fresh set of eyes on an old set of problems. And again, not to continue harping on housing, but it seems like just about every question that comes up, housing factors in on that. And I think with all businesses that the city does, that an actionable plan that's got metrics that we can track would be beneficial, and especially with housing. We were given a roadmap to do this in 2015, and I counted how many of the actionable items that we'd pursued, and it's a very small number. We haven't done, we haven't done a cottage code. We haven't done we haven't updated the PUD code. These are things that would have contributed to the types of housing that we're talking about. So I would like us to not talk in platitudes and talk about things that are actionable and get there and get it done. I'm very fearful that this town will change in a way that is going to hurt our transportation systems and isn't going to provide the affordable and attainable housing that people want. And again, we don't even have, we've been failing on that number one thing. It's very important, and everything that we do is gonna come back to that. We want people to have a place to live and be a part of the community. So all of these things that we value can continue to happen, and I think that I can contribute greatly to that. I've got a ton of ideas and even plans and actual items in mind. So anyways, thanks again. I've enjoyed the discussion, and I know that we're going to get to do it again. And have a nice evening, everybody.
Thank you. Megan, it's your turn.
Yes. I think the next few years are likely to be challenging for the city as we as a community continue to grapple with the desire to not change while we're facing the relentless changes caused by state and federal policies, financial markets, environmental changes, and our own desirability as a community. I believe the real question we as a community have to ask is not if we change, but instead, how do we change? Who do we want to be in 5 years, 20 years, 50 years? I want our community to be diverse, welcoming, caring, and healthy. I want our school teachers to be able to live on the same street as their students. I want my generation's kids to be able to live here when they grow up. And I believe most of the community would agree. We have a lot of work to do to build that community, and it will take a lot of community collaboration to build the resources, the opportunities, and the compromises it'll take to get there. Right now, the city has a real opportunity with the Rand Road property to take a significant step towards addressing our major low and middle income housing deficits, improve trail connectivity, and develop new public green space, and hopefully develop a successful model for taking more steps to accomplish our community goals. It will require leadership, dedication, hard work, and many partnerships to accomplish this work and continue to move the city closer to our goals. I've committed myself to this community and worked hard over the last 4 years to make us better. I have rolled up my sleeves, quite literally when it comes to the Children's Park rebuild, to get the work done. I hope you agree, and I hope I have earned your vote this November 3rd. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Susan?
Mine's gonna be real short and sweet. So basically, I'm gonna go back to the community. You need to involve your community. And basically, I saw a lot of things that happened while I was on council where the community was not included. So basically, I will represent all of the community, all of the constituents, whether somebody votes for me or not, I still represent you. And basically, I'm going to ask for your vote, please. And then I don't want to make decisions for you. I want to make decisions with you. And thank you very much for being a moderator, Paul. And thank you very much, Chamber.
All right, you're welcome. And Gladys?
You know, we're at a time where we must change, and we must change together. We can't go back to what normal was, because that we know that that's not what we want to be moving forward, right? I will continue to work to create an inclusive environment that, again, just embraces our differences. As the only woman of color who's here, put me in because of just that. We cannot have all white city councilors making decisions for a community that doesn't include white people, right? We have many other groups that are available. It's important that we make people feel that they belong, that they are welcome, that they are wanted, that we are going to collaborate together to figure out how to make this change happen together. And I will continue to be a bridge to the underserved members of our community to create an inclusive environment, again, embracing our differences. We have to collaborate, we have to compromise, we have to meet in the middle, because we can't continue the way that we are right now. We have to do so together, and that means compromising. That means respecting each other's opinions and figuring out, again, how to move forward together, because we can't go back to where we were.
All right, thank you. Don?
Yeah. Paul, really appreciate you moderating, guys. This has been a lot of fun. I want to get voted in based on the content of my character, not the color of my skin. But that's just me. I also think that I bring a very specific skill set to City Council. I do have a big background in project management and budgets and budgetary management, and I hope to leverage that to get what the citizens of Hood River want done. I do think that we can make a lot of changes to the way we structure our goals and how we measure our accomplishments. Right now, it's easy to say, oh, let's go and attack affordable housing. Well, what sort of metrics are you using to say, yes, you were successful, or no, you weren't? So let's bring some measurable and attainable goals to our goal setting for next year, and then let the people decide whether we met those or not. I also think that in today's world of technology, there's no reason to not have more transparency. You know, why are we not live streaming all the city council events and posting them on YouTube? Everybody would know exactly who they'd voted for and have instant feedback on what sort of candidates that they had on city council. So I think using technology for free that would create greater transparency on this would be critical. So with that, thanks everyone.
All right, thank you. And I think there's a proverb that begins something like, the first shall be last and the last shall be first, or something like that. And anyway, Mark, you kicked it off, and you get to wrap it up. Gladys, I'm sorry, but there's no rebuttal available. We'll all be talking again tomorrow at the Rotary, and if you want to make a comment at that point in time, welcome to do that. But that's how the rules of engagement. Thank you. And Mark, if you'd conclude, please.
First of all, I was remiss in mentioning to business owners that MCED did just get a new pot of money, and please go to their website and look and see what new funds are available right now. You don't have to wait for the city stuff. And then second, this is a really important election. Please vote. Get your family to vote. Get your friends to vote. Get your neighbors to vote. This is how we citizens make a difference, both locally and nationally. And then thanks to Ashley, the Chamber, and to Paul for facilitating this great discussion. In closing, I want to emphasize the following. One, much of the work that we've been doing on council and the city and what we've been talking about tonight are an interconnected web of projects that I believe will make Hood River a better place and grow smarter. Housing, parks, active transportation, smooth running city machine are all connected pieces to the puzzle. Improving community-wide communications is critical. It's, you know, you guys are absolutely right that that's something that we talk about all the time, but we need to do better. City priorities are set by council after listening to constituents, having open meetings where the public can bring their thoughts into the discussion, and listening to staff and discussing the issues in our meetings. But we need to do more and continually improve our communications. Things do not go as fast as what we want. It's true. I mean, I'm frustrated sometimes, but doing things right is more important. And it comes back to, we only have so many staff hours, and so we don't want to kill them. We have to govern our expectations a little bit that way. I might not always vote the way everyone agrees, but I will listen fully, and I'll be transparent of why I voted the way I did. As counselor, I promise that I'll continue to be an active and strong voice by being prepared, listening carefully, offering changes and criticisms gently, and being willing to compromise. The city is really a soup made better by input from everybody. I ask for your support in the election, and I look forward to Hood River being Hood River. So.
All right, thank you. All right, so as we conclude the Chamber's general election candidate forum, I'd like to start off with first thanking Ashley and Mary Ellen on work with the Chamber. I'd like to especially thank our candidates for participating tonight, for your willingness to run for office, your willingness to serve. It's got to be a very difficult and frustrating time to run for office in the middle of a pandemic. You know, I've run for office. I understand what people want, which is they want you to knock on the door, they want to talk to you, they want to shake your hand, they want to meet you face to face, and you can't give them that. With respect to giving, I want to talk a little bit about the Chamber again. I started off with the Chamber is very much funded by all the events they hold, and they can't do it this time. We aren't doing the Harvest Fest. We aren't doing the Hops Fest. We aren't doing the Cross Channel Swim. We aren't doing the Cider Fest. They're hit by COVID as badly as anyone else around. And what have they done tonight? They've created a format for candidates to discuss together their thoughts, their opinions, their goals, their dreams. And when we did this last spring, we had maybe about 50 people watching, which is not a huge group, but about 250 wound up watching the video later on. Tonight we have a smaller group of people watching, but guess what? You guys are up against the vice presidential candidates, and they just have a little more clout, I think. But what we have done, though, is create something that will be out there for your fellow citizens to watch. So I really strongly encourage you to post, when the Chamber posts this, to add a link on your Facebook page, to encourage your supporters to look at it, encourage your friends and family to look at it, and give them an opportunity to see all of you together. So with that, I will turn it over to the woman in charge. Ashley, the floor is yours. You need to turn on your mic, though.
Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. I actually unmuted myself and muted myself again. But anyway, I just want to thank you so much for your time tonight. Paul, this was a volunteer effort on his part. So I do want to say thank you for that and show some gratitude. I also want to say thank you to our incumbent city councilors, mayor, and state rep for the time and effort that you've put into our community and state during your terms, and also to our candidates for having the energy and willingness to engage in our community. So thank you to all of you for your time this evening. And Paul, thank you for your mention of the Chamber and the work that we continue to strive to do despite really challenging financial impacts from COVID. We will record this like Paul mentioned. We will push it through all of our communication channels and hope that you will as well. And that being said, thank you so much for your time this evening, and we'll hopefully do this again in the future. So thank you.
Good night, folks. And you 6, I'll see you tomorrow at noon. Good night.